Progress.
Speaking about the idea of very high neshamas like the Rashbi, and comparing them with the Alter Rebbe. So let's begin. To understand what they said in the Zohar. Who is considered the face of the master Havaya? What's the face of Havaya? Da Rab Shimon ben Yochai. This is going on Rab Shimon ben Yochai, which is obviously a very unusual type of expression to say about a human being, that this is the face of Hashem. It's explained concerning this Namayim of Alter Rebbe. In Ksiv it says in the pasuk, "Laman achai v'rei adaber no shalom bach." For the sake of my brothers and fellows, friends, however you want to translate the word rei, also beloveds maybe, I will speak, please, shalom in you. So it's explained that the levels of shalom and bach goes on Zah and Malchus, specifically Yesoid and Malchus. Shalom koyal Yesoid Zeir Ampin. Shalom, the level of peace, is going on Yesoid of Zeir Ampin, perhaps because the idea of Yesoid is the chibur of Zah and Malchus. It's the place of the union of Zeir Ampin and Malchus. It's a level of Shalom. It's making Shalom between Pamay Shamayla or May Shamata, the upper worlds, the lower worlds, Elikus and Evraim, and so on. Becha koyal Malchus, and Becha is going on Malchus, perhaps also because of Becha is the letters Chav Beis, the Chav Beis letters of the Aleph Beis, 22 letters, Gematria Chav Beis Becha, having to do with Malchus, which is the Olam Hadibur, perhaps. What does it mean? I will speak, please, Shalom with you, or in you. It's the flow, it's the influence of Yisoid, of Zeir Ampin into Malchus. It's similar to what it says, and I will place peace in the land, like it's explained in the Zohar, that I guess also the same thing, Oretz is the level of Malchus, Yisoid is the level of Shalom, so Nasati Shalom Ba'aretz is the Yichud of Zoh Malchus. But beforehand, before it talks about the Yichud of Zoh Malchus, Magdim B'Kosov, and he prefaces it in the pasuk, Laman Achai V'Rei, for the sake of my brothers and my fellows. Behind this means Shashbos Yisoid Zoh Malchus, the flow of Yisoid of Zeir Ampin to Malchus. Aber Dabr no Shalom Bach, I will speak, please, peace into you. He Laman Achai V'Rei, it's for the sake of my brothers and my fellows. Shebishvilom, for their sake, Nimshach Hashefa di Yisoid Zeir Ampin LaMalchus, comes on the Ashpa of Zeir Ampin to Malchus. The Tzar Glavim, we did understand, Mi Heim Eila, Mihem Elush Nekroim Achim Bereim Shaloi. Who are these individuals that are called the Achim and the Reim of Hashem, that because of that, the Eibishter is Mashpia Zah into Malchus. In other words, who are the Eibishter saying, I, Hashem, am giving over the Hashpah of Zeir Ampin into Malchus, for the sake, Hashem says, of my brothers and my fellows. Who are Hashem's Achim? Who are Hashem's Reim? Who are Hashem's brothers and fellows? That he would say the Eibishter has brothers, he say the Eibishter has fellows. Similar to the Mampnei Od Navai Dorashbi, this type of connection of a human being with the level of Shemit Kivavki. Oizbeis. But the idea behind this is the Nikashim Netzl Yud Spheres Tatzilus, Ba'eretz V'Kelim, when the 10 spheres of Atzilus were emanated and they became out of the higher levels, out of Keser and out of higher than that, and they actually were enclosed, the Oiris into the Kelim, Netzlu imahim gamke neshamas ta'atzilus. Along with those oiris and kalim were emanated those that would become the neshamas, unknown, those neshamas that are known as neshamas of the world of Atzilus. And since they come together with them, so they are like brothers to the spheres, and the kroim Achim v'reim l'zeir anpin. They are called brothers and they are called fellows for zeir anpin, because they came together just like children are born from the same parents. The difference between the neshamas of Atzilus, they are called brothers and fellows to Zeir Anpin. To the neshamas, the way they are in the world of Bria, a neshama of Atzilus cannot handle anything bad. Why is that so? Because that's the nature of Atzilus. Atzilus cannot handle things that are bad. Because in the world of Atzilus, there is no bad whatsoever. Like it says, you, the one who you are, the level of the Eibishter, which is the level of the spheres of Atzilus, which is totally miyuch with the Eibishter, over there will not dwell bad. This means Atzilus, who alakus mamish, the level of Atzilus is totally godliness. The ein belakus shum tarubas rachas shalom. Since it's completely and totally godliness, it's not like the level of Bria where it starts already the concept, the beginning of Nevroim, of created beings. So since it's the level of Atzilus, which is totally alakus, if it's godliness, it's impossible to say, it's impossible to be over there a level of bad whatsoever. Therefore, we find in David HaMelech, during the time of his sin, the Shechina left from him. So therefore, because the level of Shechina is the level of the Gili of the world of Atzilus, and because the Gili of the world of Atzilus, it cannot be together with something negative. That is all the world of Atzilus. That's all about Neshamas Atzilus. As opposed to when the godly power is concealed in the world of Bria, so then there is a mixture of bad. In the world of Bria, we know that the amount of bad is only the minority, it's not the majority. The majority of the world of Bria is good, but there's still a little amount of bad over there. And since there's a low amount of bad, then it's possible the idea of a sin. That's where it says a soul that will sin, but specifically nefesh daika, specifically the level called nefesh, as opposed to ruach or neshama or higher, specifically the level of nefesh, the level of nefesh has to do with the worlds of Bria Sirasiyah. That's why it's nefesh kisechta. It won't say neshama kisechta or ruach kisechta, because in those levels it's the level of Atzilus. So the level of nefesh in bia v'loy ma'atzilus. The level of nefesh which is from bia and not from Atzilus. Over there it's applicable to pasuk where it says nefesh kisechta. Top of the second page, 236. So he's given. Hine Rab Shimon ben Yochai neshama d'Atzilus. The Rashbi was a neshama of Atzilus. Since the level of Atzilus is mamish godliness, therefore it was possible for him to say about himself, all I am is a sign for Hashem. I'm no Metzius whatsoever. And he said other types of similar expressions, in boasting and exalting his very being very, very high. Though it's not the manners of tzaddikim to speak about themselves in very high and lofty terms. Because this idea, the way it was by the Rashbi, the way the Rab Shimon ben Yochai spoke about himself, it's not his own exaltedness, it's not his own holding himself high. It's actually the exaltedness and the upliftedness of godliness, because he is nothing separated than godliness. There is no separate Metzius than him, than Alakus himself. He's in a neshama of Atzilus. This type of approach is also the difference between the type of avodah in the worlds of Bri Yitzir Asiyah to the type of avodah of the world of Atzilus. Sha'avodah b'biyah hi b'inyan habitul. The avodah in Bri Yitzir Asiyah involves bringing oneself to bittul. You do not speak in terms of reimamus and isnasus and anosim on ba'alma. It's about negating and sublimating and so on. How come? Because of where they begin. How did all the creations and beings of Biyah come into being? They came into being and they were created as a separate entity from godliness. So being that they're a separate entity from godliness, that separateness, that independence needs to be sublimated to Elikus, needs to be sublimated to the Eibishter. As opposed to Neshama Datzilus, that's not something separated, but it's rather mamish godliness. The avoid is just the opposite. It's not about sublimation, it's not about negation, it's about raising up, because it's not the person raising himself up as a separate thing from Hashem. It's not the person himself raising himself up. It's rather the raising up of godliness itself. His entire being is the being of godliness. So when he speaks about himself in a lofty way, he's speaking about Hashem. He's not speaking about himself as an entity separate from Hashem. According to this understood why the colleagues of Rav Shimon ben Yochai said about Rav Shimon ben Yochai, who is the face of the Master Hashem? That's Rashbi, because he was not identified as a separate entity. That was an exception, but not all neshamas of tzaddikim are able to raise themselves up so high. Except for those neshamas that are mamish from Atzilus, that are called brothers and fellows. These are the unique individuals of every generation, like the neshama of Rashim B'Yechoi, etc. And that is sufficient for those that understand about this. And afterwards the Maimer adds, look up in Torah Or about the topic of Shem Tzvakos, and the Alter Rebbe continues, similar to what the Moshe Rabbeinu said. We have this in V'hoyim Shemai. It says, I will give grass to the field. How the whole idea of Chumash Dvarim is that Moshe Rabbeinu was speaking in his voice. The first four Chumash Torah, if it would say V'nasati Esav, that's normal, because it's all Hashem speaking, or a third speaking on behalf of Hashem, however that is. But the fifth Chumash Dvarim, is all Moshe Rabbeinu saying, I went up on Har Sinai, and I got the luchas, and I spoke to Hashem, and I davened for you, etc., etc. And I asked Hashem to be able to go into Eretz Yisrael, and so on. So if it's all Moshe Rabbeinu speaking, how does he say, V'nasati Esav, I will give grass? But because Moshe Rabbeinu was an Neshama D'Atzilus, and the Neshama D'Atzilus is not separated from Elikus, it's one with Elikus. So Moshe Rabbeinu has a Neshama D'Atzilus that's one with Elikus. Like Achavireh, like we said before, to the Sridus of Atzilus, can say, V'nasati, I Hashem, that's one with Hashem, will give you the grass in the field. We find a similar thing also, similar to what we find, the Alter Rebbe speaks about it in Tanya, that a malach is sometimes in the Geras HaKodesh and Kuntrasachron, that a malach is sometimes called by the name Havaya, that Havaya spoke to whoever, but was a malach really speaking. And also that the malach spoke as if he was Hashem. I will do such and such, where it's really Hashem. Because when the Malach is fulfilling the mission of Hashem, he is completely identified and one with Hashem, and therefore he can speak as if he is Hashem. So this is the same thing by the neshamas of Atzilus that are called Achim Bereim to the Spheres and to the Eibishter, and therefore all their loftiness and their holding himself high, that's all about Alikus. It's not about Chas v'Shalom and Nivra proclaiming himself high and lacking of bit. So the connection with Chayel that the Rebbe is saying this Maimon is because it's the birthday of the Alter Rebbe. In other words, the day that we speak about the Alter Rebbe's neshama and what he accomplished in this world. So the Rebbe is going to connect this, that the same idea that we just now said about the Rashbi being a neshama d'Atzilus, the same idea that applies by the Alter Rebbe as well, being a neshama d'Atzilus. Ois Dalet. This is also the idea of the Alter Rebbe, that he was a neshama of Atzilus. Behind this means while he was down here below, he was mamish like in the world of Atzilus. Therefore, all the things that he did down here below came as if by itself, without any type of effort, in the very same manner, the way the matters are above. In other words, the way something took place above, automatically that was something that the Alter Rebbe manifested down here because of his unity with Hashem. Okay, as it's known, on Friday afternoon, he would fall asleep on his own. And it's explained that in contrast to a certain chassid, I think it was Rabbi Hillel Paritcher, that used to go to sleep on Friday afternoon. Why did that chassid, I think it was Rabbi Hillel Paritcher, that went to sleep on Friday afternoon? The Alter Rebbe fell asleep, but it was all for the same reason. Because above, on Friday afternoon, that's the spiritual time of sleep. So by the Alter Rebbe, who was a neshama d'Atzilus, it happened automatically. The Rabbi Hillel Paritcher, who wanted to emulate what's going on above, he wasn't a neshama d'Atzilus. He had to go to sleep to be able to affect this. The key was showing neshama d'Atzilus, since the Alter Rebbe was a neshama d'Atzilus. The meaning of being a neshama d'Atzilus means that this experience of Atzilus is down here below as above. When we say the term neshama d'Atzilus, every neshama came from Atzilus. As we know from right away the beginning of Tanya and Perek Beis, every neshama came from Chokmasei Yisbarach, from Machshavtei, from the Atzilus, from Chacham d'Atzilus. So why do we say, the Rashbi is a neshama d'Atzilus, special tzaddikim are neshamas d'Atzilus, and the Alter Rebbe was a neshama d'Atzilus? The difference is, like the Alter Rebbe says over there in Perek Beis, there was a transition from the Moyach Ha'av, the Alter Rebbe says in Perek Beis, some changed and became toenails, and some remained Moyach HaBen. So neshamas d'Atzilus means that even the neshama, the way it came down here, and it traveled through Bri Yitzir Asiyah, it went through those worlds, but it wasn't of those worlds. It didn't become affected by those worlds. Those worlds were only so you should be able to reach from Atzilus to the world of Asiyah. So I had to go, Alam Hazagash, had to go through Bri Yitzir Asiyah to be able to become clothed in a physical body, live in a physical world. But it didn't change, just like the Moyach Ha'av and the Moyach HaBen is still Moyach, it's all brain. Other neshamas d'Asiyah, for example, Nefesh, the Malchus d'Asiyah, the way the Alter Rebbe used the term in Perek Beis and Tanya, they are like what came out of the Moyach Ha'av, that through the 9 months, the Bet and Ha'im, it changed and became transformed into toenail material. They became neshamas of Bia. They are not identifying anymore with the experience of Atzilus. They do not have an Atzilus experience and feeling while being here in this world. So, but the Alter Rebbe, going back to what we're saying over here, since he was a neshama d'Atzilus, So since we said the whole idea of Atzilus is only godliness, there's nothing negative, and he was a Neshama d'Atzilus, meaning that in this world he was a Neshama d'Atzilus, just like he was a Neshama d'Atzilus when he was an Atzilus. So therefore, he had a Gila Lakus down here below, as it was above. By him, it didn't make a difference whether he was spiritually in Atzilus or physical in the physical world down here. He was living an Atzilus experience in this physical world. Because of that, he had the capability to impact and affect a revelation of godliness to all. Like was explained before in the explanation of, for my sake of my brothers and my fellows, I will speak, please, shalom in you. Shalom man achai v'reai, shehem neshamas d'atzilus, for the sake of my brothers and my fellows. Shehem neshamas d'atzilus. We said before that these are neshamas of atzilus. Nasa hashpos yisoid b'malchus, comes the flow and influence of yisoid of zeir ampin into malchus. Through that becomes the revelation of atzilus and biyah. In other words, the revelation of godliness down here below is thanks to and because of the achai v'reai, because of the neshamas that are neshamas d'atzilus. So the Rebbe is going to explain further. The idea behind this is, as it's known, through the Alter Rebbe came about the spreading of your well springs outward. That was told to the Baal Shem Tov by Mashiach. That Mashiach told the Baal Shem Tov when is he going to come, when your well springs will spread out. So the Alter Rebbe was the one that manifested that. Behind this means the Imi Yeshu B'Shosha Namar La Baal Shem Tov, top of 237. Though at the time that it was told to the Baal Shem Tov that the coming of Mashiach will take place, when your teachings will become known, will become revealed in the world. And your well springs will spread outward. And people will be able to also make the elevations and the unions, the spiritual matings like you do. So he siyarim ezachulu. It says that the Baal Shem Tov, when he heard it, he became very fearful from this, and there was a whole story behind this that the Baruch Mezhebuzer, the grandson of the Baal Shem Tov, took this to heart as that the Baal Shem Tov was fearful of doing this, so he didn't really appreciate spreading Chassidus. Alter Rebbe said that the Baal Shem Tov was fearful about how long it would take, and that's why the Alter Rebbe was putting in all of his effort to make sure that it spreads further and further. So even though this was something that was told to Baal Shem Tov, and the Baal Shem Tov was already scared of it, the third line from the top, still in all niffling and zayde Rabbeinu Azok Mizgal Torah's Chassidus Chabad. This matter of the spreading of the well springs comes about through the Alter Rebbe in the revelation of the teachings of Chassidus Chabad. What does the teaching of Chassidus Chabad have to do with revealing the Torah of Baal Shem Tov? Because as the Rebbeim said, Shehi Torah Baal Shem Tov. Chabad, the Rebbe Rashab explained, is the very teaching of the Baal Shem Tov. So, and the Rebbe explains, what does that mean? That's the very identical teaching of the Baal Shem Tov. It's not just in such a way that within 200 there's 100. So the same thing in the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov, it includes the teaching of the Alter Rebbe. But rather, that's where the laser focus is. The true teaching of the Baal Shem Tov is expressed through the Alter Rebbe. As it's known, Baal Shem Tov showed how one must serve Hashem. And the Alter Rebbe showed how is it possible to serve Hashem. And therefore, that is the very expression of the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov that's necessary for the coming of Mashiach. And how did he do so in Torah's Chassidus Chabad? Ba'ofen shegam b'seichel anushi yasigel lekuz, that also in such a way that with human intellect they should be able to comprehend godliness.